I think we can all agree that learning about geography is important. After all, we want our kids to know where you can find different places, where different countries are at in relationship to us, what kind of landforms and landscapes there are. But let's be honest, there are a lot of ways of teaching geography that are a little bit boring. And I was in danger of turning geography into one of those boring, monotonous subjects that just didn't seem meaningful to my kids until I made some changes. And I was able to transform what could have been a very dull subject into something that was fun, engaging, and meaningful to them. And so today I'm going to share ways that I made geography fun for my kids. Hey guys, welcome back to my Practically Imperfect Life. As I mentioned in the start of this video, I wanted to talk about geography today and how you can make it a more engaging subject for your kids. Now, does every subject have to be, quote, fun? No, there are definitely times when school is going to be school. Some of it's going to be hard. Now, you're not going to find everything to be fun and engaging. However, geography doesn't have to be one of those subjects. I had started out thinking that teaching my kids geography was all about memorization, getting them to memorize the names of countries, capitals, certain land features, and where they were at. And to that end, I used curriculum that basically did that. In fact, I'll throw some pictures up of some of the ones that we used. Now, were these bad curriculum programs? No, I mean, they did the job. My kids memorized countries, they memorized capitals, they knew where things were at. They could identify almost every country in the world on a map, and that was a good thing. Did that mean anything to them? And did it stick with them over the time? Not as much. So as we started to move towards high school, I realized that I really wanted this to be something that we changed up, that we came back to and looked at a little bit differently, but looked at it through a lens of cultural geography. And so that involved changing my approach. Yes, they still needed to be able to identify where places were at on a map. That's a given. It has to happen. However, I knew, especially as my son was entering his freshman year of high school, I wanted to do a cultural geography type of program, and I started to dig around and look for lots of different things. Now, many of you who have followed me for a while know that that was when I first found Guest Hollow programs, and we did Guest Hollow's cultural geography program. Wonderful program. I wish I'd known about it in middle school because they have a junior version of the program. Would have definitely done that instead at that time. But whether or not you choose to go with their program, and I do highly suggest that you consider it and look into it more. And in fact, I'll link the video where I talked about why we liked it so much. There are still things you can do and incorporate into whatever geography curriculum you're doing, or even if you're not using a curriculum, things you can pull together to help make the subject more meaningful to your kids. Just knowing where things are at just isn't enough when it comes to geography. Geography has such a huge impact both on the history of the world and human civilization and on what's going on currently. Geography has determined where people have stopped and created new colonies, where people have settled, what kinds of economies places have, whether or not places have turned into big farming locations or if they've turned into more urban cities. There are so many things today that are impacted by our geography, whether or not you're near mountains or near an ocean, or if there are certain features in your country that make it difficult for enemies to invade. There's just so much going on in the world. Almost everything you read in the news today, you can look at the geography of that place, what's there and how it's impacting the lives of the people. And that's really what I wanted my kids to pull away, is the fact that we're not just memorizing where places are at. We're not just memorizing whether there are mountains or ocean coastlines or lakes or rivers, but we're actually looking at why those things were important to the development of that location. And to that end, there are a couple things that I'd love to recommend to you. So first of all, I really think that there are ways that you can make the memorization of different countries more fun. If you have the ability to create a space in your homeschool room to put up some maps, that is the first place I would start. Give them something visual to look at. Now, you can purchase maps of the whole world. You can purchase maps of just your particular country. I, for example, have a couple of the United States up on our wall. I also have a world map up on our wall. I got these different laminated ones from Amazon. I'll show a picture up here for you. And I have ones that show the political outline, so a political map. I have ones that show more of the geographic features of those areas. And then I have some that are more like topical maps where it's going to show population density, or it's going to show things like the division of languages and things like that. So you can find lots of different maps that will give different features to your kids. Another option would be to have your kids help create their own maps. There are links online where you can print off giant world maps. And this is one thing I really wish I had the wall space to do, but you can actually print off multiple pages, put them all together like a big giant puzzle on your wall, and you can create a giant world map, something that would be really fun and engaging for your kids. They could go up, they could mark countries as they learn them, they could draw in symbols to represent different features, like where are the mountains, where are the rivers, and things like that. You could even add in stickers and drawings of key landmarks, whether those be natural landmarks or human-made landmarks. In Paris, you could draw the Eiffel Tower, you could draw Big Ben over London, you could do the pyramids in Egypt, but really make something that is engaging for your kids. And that's something you can use with your kids all the way from elementary school ages up to high school. If you don't have the space to do the larger maps, consider getting a pad of plain maps that they can color on. So I searched on Amazon, I found a couple that I liked. So these are still good size maps, but they are ones that your kids can then customize. So teach them to make different kinds of maps that show different features. For example, have one just be a political map. So a political outline map is where you actually will say, this is this country, here's this country's borders, maybe identify a couple of key cities. Have them do one that is going to be landscapes. Do different kinds of colors to show whether it's a desert, whether it's plain, whether it's forest draw in the mountains, draw in the rivers. And then choose different things depending on their age that you think would be interesting for them to track. Where are major religion groups found? Where are population densities found? Where are different kinds of crops grown or different kind of things related to the economy? You can come up with symbols with your kids. If it's a fishing economy or one that's based on fishing, you can draw a symbol for that. If it's something that's based on farming, what is it that they grow? Draw some symbols to represent that. Perhaps it's a really big mining community and you can have a symbol for whether they're mining coal or other materials. But there are lots of different ways you can customize these different maps, and then your kids can start to make a correlation between what they see in terms of landscape features and what they see in terms of the economy and the population density, and start to figure out how those things all go together. So that's a really fun way to get your kids started. The second thing I would recommend is to start to pull in that cultural component. Don't just memorize where something is on a map. Find out about the people there and their culture. That's one of the things that really drew me to the Guest Hallow program, was that as we were memorizing where places were at, we were deep diving into those nations. We were learning about their religion, their dress, their food. We were learning about traditions. We were learning about the things that had happened in their history and what was going on there now. And so it gave my kids a really well-rounded idea about these different cultures that you can find around the world. You can incorporate handcrafts, you can do food, you can find recipe books from that area and have a themed night where you're making all dishes from that country. Consider finding out about different holidays and celebrations that they do. You could decorate your room, listen to music from those countries. And it's just so many different things you can do. I also would recommend that if you want to find out more about the cultures, there are lots of great YouTube channels out there that focus on different places around the world. I can show a couple of videos down below in the description box, or a couple of sites that I have particularly enjoyed sharing with my kids that have helped with learning about geography and cultures. But this can be a great thing to do, especially if you have kids who are really great visual learners. They really enjoy watching and listening to educational videos in order to gain that information. Books are another phenomenal way to go. I have loved to collect books about different areas around the world. One of my favorite things to do is to go into Barnes & Noble and go up and down their discount book aisle. You would be surprised at how many books they have there, from anywhere from $5 to $20, about different countries around the world. Different travel books, different ones that talk about countries now or countries history. I have gotten things like the travel book. I have this beautiful book that shows all of these overhead pictures all across Africa. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Now these are bigger books. Some of these are much larger books. And yes, there is a cost to them, but they are just wonderful to have in our homeschool for my kids to flip through whenever we're discussing a particular country. And even now, as we're in further history programs, if those countries come up, I will pull out those books as a resource and they can look through them and they can go through that information again. And sometimes it's fun just to sit down and look through them just because, right? Because books are just amazing to have on hand. So I would highly recommend checking out that area of Barnes & Noble. There are always lots of options there. Now they do have, of course, lots of other books that are more regular price, but if you are looking for something on a budget, definitely check out those discount areas. I've also looked at places like half price books when I've wanted to scroll around and try to find different books on cultures and geography. I have looked at discount book sites. I have looked on Amazon in their used books options, and I've been able to really expand our collection in that way. Now, it's been a couple of years since my son has finished cultural geography, but what did it look like when we were in the thick of it doing this curriculum? Well, each week we had a different country or a different area that he was studying. And so I really tried to theme out those weeks and bring in a lot of things to help kind of immerse him in those cultures. He would be reading about that country in the online textbook. He'd be doing workbook pages, but to me that was just not enough. We wanted to really use all of the resources that the curriculum had. So I would have music playing in the background. We would pick a night that week that was going to be like our themed dinner night, and whether we used the recipes that came with the curriculum that were linked or ones that we had found, we would pick a couple of dishes and have a full meal. He usually liked to help with whatever the dessert was. If there were particular traditions or holidays in that country that he found interesting, we would deep dive into those and see what more we could do. For example, when we were studying Mexico, we were learning about the Day of the Dead. We made the sugar cookie skulls. We made pressed sugar skulls, like the little shaped ones. We had just so much fun. We listened to music, and it was just a really, fun and engaging experience for him. But we also learned about what were things that were challenges for that country, especially current challenges. So when we were talking about current diets, we were learning about the foods that were available in some areas but not in others, and how that correlated to health and a rise in diabetes and things like that. So he wasn't just learning about kind of the fun traditions and foods and things like that, but he was also learning about how all of this stuff is currently impacting the people who live there. And that really helps him gain perspective on challenges that that country might be facing today. And we just did that through all of these different countries that we studied for the full 36-week curriculum, and it was really a great time. And a lot of that has really stuck with him. Now, as he's moving on, he is now studying U.S. history, but he studied world history after that, and a lot of the things that he already knew about other countries helped with his understanding of what had happened in their history. So if you can really get your kid engaged and retaining that information, it will be extremely beneficial to them as they move through other history courses later on in the high school years. Now, if you wanted to do something like this in a co-op setting or partnering with other homeschool families, that is another fabulous option, because it allows you to kind of take turns pulling all of these different things together. Perhaps you have several families, and once a month you get together and you pick a country or region you're going to study, and one family is responsible for getting all of the materials together for it. And then the next month it's a different family. You can get your kids together. Maybe they can enjoy making a meal. They can read different books. Maybe they can do different country study presentations. There are lots of different things that you can kind of have ready and available for lots of different age groups. Maybe you have a collection of books available, picture books for your youngest students all the way up to more advanced books for your older students. I also really have enjoyed trying to find books, whether those are fiction or nonfiction books, that are a little bit on the longer side that go along with the areas we're studying, and having my kids kind of look at those or read those, because I think there's a lot you can learn from historical fiction, especially really well done historical fiction that helps with the understanding about different areas around the world. And there are more and more books being written today about areas of the world that have kind of long been missing in literature. And I've really enjoyed kind of seeing things through a new lens. For example, recently I read a book called The Girl with the Louding Voice, and that is set over in Africa, and it follows a girl not that long ago who was from a small village and then was basically turned into like an indentured servant, and then had to kind of fight her way to get out of that situation just to get herself an education. And this isn't something that's, complete fiction. This actually happens to girls still today. And so it was a really wonderful book to get that perspective of what life is like in that country and the challenges that she's facing. And it was a book that I then had both of my kids take a look at because I thought it was important for them to get that same perspective as well. So you can really find a lot of great resources to help pull all this stuff together. Now you might be saying, I love this idea of having all of these different things for my kids to do and recipes and music and activities and online videos and all that, but I don't have time to research and find all of that stuff. And I totally understand because I was there. As I mentioned, I had utilized that one geography curriculum. I actually utilized it for 3 years. And by the time we got to year 2, I was like, I have to add in something else because I even realized that this was really boring for my kids. And I tried to pull in books. I tried to throw in some handcrafts. I tried to make, a couple of extra recipes for them, but I just did not have the time to dedicate to every single country doing all of that research. And if that is you, I cannot recommend the Geography and Cultures course enough from Guest Hollow. It really was a wonderful introduction to their curriculum and how it works because it just had all of that stuff and it had it already put together for me. I mean, it had the links to the music, it had the links to the videos, it had links to the crafts, it had worksheets, it had online games. So my son really enjoyed one set of games. They were called Satera games, and you went on and you basically play games to help learn where countries are at, labeling rivers. He was learning about mountains, volcanoes, all kinds of stuff. And he was figuring out where all that stuff was through these online games. They had the online textbook, so he was reading about different places. He was filling out his workbook as he went through it. So he was getting something that felt a little bit more like a formal curriculum in that regard. And then they had all of these wonderful recommended books. There were a ton of nonfiction books, which I appreciated. Some really good resource books that just, they were colorful and they were engaging and they hit on different topics. We learned about practices related to funerals and death in different cultures. We learned about foods from different cultures. We learned about clothing in different cultures. We looked at graphic novels. We were reading fiction books, historical fiction books. We were reading everything. We absorbed all of the books. It was wonderful. There were so many different options, and I went a little overboard that year. I wanted to do all of the things with him, and we were doing a lot. And as the year went on, we kind of had to pare down and pick and choose a little bit to be able to fit it all in, but we wanted to do all of the things. We could have easily just spread that curriculum out over 2 years and just really enjoyed deep diving and doing all of the different options it has. So I highly recommend checking it out. Again, if you want to see a video that kind of shows you more about that, I do have it. I'll link it for you. And I talk a bit about how it works and why I really liked it. It's also in my Guest Hollow playlist if you want to see it there. But if you are looking for something that kind of does all that work for you without without you having to put a lot of time into finding all of those resources, highly recommend it. And then you can kind of pick and choose through the options they have, what types of things you think will work best for your students. It's a great option to look at. But those are some of the ways that I took geography from being like so-so, and I turned it into something that was much more fun and engaging for my teens. So to summarize all of this, learning where places are located and where geographic features are at is an important part of geography, but so is understanding about the cultures that are found in different places and how that geography has impacted both history and current events in those places. And you can make that something that really comes to life for your kids. It might take a little extra effort and a little more time kind of pulling things together, but I will guarantee that it is so worth it. And as you watch your students move up through those high school years and being able to kind of apply that in their different courses, whether those are history, government, economic courses, you will be so glad that you took the time to get them engaged in these geography courses throughout their younger years. If you have any questions about anything that I've talked about today, feel free to drop a comment. If you have other geography and culture resources that you would like to share, I also encourage you to put those down below. That way we can share resources back and forth and with other viewers and be able to put together some really awesome things for our students. Thanks so much for joining me for today's video, everybody. I will see you in the next one, and until then, happy homeschooling.